Welcome back to The Book Stop. I'm so excited to talk about today's episode. Fair warning moving forward, this podcast does contain spoilers as we go over major events within the novels. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. Welcome to the second episode of The Book Stop. That's crazy.
I know, I feel so honored to be here.
I'm sure. This is Sabrina, my roommate slash cousin, and
slash best friend.
Yep. She's here today. What book did you bring for us?
It is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls.
Yes. Why did you bring that today?
You know, it is kind of a weird book to bring, because it is a little bit depressing and aggressive at times, but I read this book a long time ago. And I already had a copy of it, so of course that made it easier.
Surprising that you had the copy and I didn't.
I know, that is very shocking, because I own probably a sixth of the books that you do.
A sliver, if you will.
But I read this, and I think it's a really great story for anyone to read, to kind of give you, like, a little insight on how other people live, because sometimes you forget that maybe not everyone's as fortunate as you were. Yeah. Or even are, and even if you think you had a sucky childhood, just read this book, and then you'll feel better.
Maybe. We don't know what you went through. So a little bit about this author, Jeanette Walls. So she published this book in 2005, and it was a bestseller for over 400 weeks, which is amazing.
That's crazy.
That's so long. It's
gotta be a record.
So Jeanette Walls, she's a journalist. It's hard to really describe the author when the entire book's about her, and I want to kind of get into the book, but there is a little interesting fact I want to start out. Do you know when her birthday is? This is not a trivial question or anything.
No, I do not.
Her birthday is April 21st.
Oh my gosh!
1960.
You guys are birthday twins.
Birthday twins.
That's so cute.
Call me up, Jeanette. We'll have a little birthday party.
She's a little old to have a birthday party with you, but that's fine.
That's okay. It's fine. Yeah, to start us out, I like to play a little game. And so today you're going to describe the plot in 30 seconds, but twist, wrong answers only.
See, I knew this was going to happen, and I'm glad I didn't prepare, because I would have prepared for the wrong thing. Okay, wrong answers only.
Okay, and your time is going to start now.
Okay, so this book is about an old man who doesn't have any children, and it's pretty much the story of, like, the end of his life, you know, and how easy it was for him. He was a millionaire. He had everything in the world. He had so much food that he didn't even know what to do with it, and he was never married, never even looked at another human being in the entire world. He was completely covered in tattoos, though.
Okay, time. I guess for wrong answers, I would say you did pretty well.
I don't think any of that was correct.
So yeah, I think those were... There was a guy in there, but it wasn't the main character.
The main character is not an old man, it is a young girl.
This is the actual summary of the book, with correct answers. So, this book recounts unconventional upbringing of Jeanette and her 3 siblings at the hands of her deeply dysfunctional parents. The kids must learn to take care of themselves. When sober, Walls' brilliant and charismatic father captures their imagination, teaches them physics, geology, and how to embrace life fearlessly. But when he's drunk, he's dishonest and destructive. Meanwhile, their mother believes in the idea of raising a family, but doesn't want to put the work into it. So obviously that came off of the web. I didn't write that. And when I first read that, I was like, ooh, that just drew me right in. I was like, yes. But before we start talking about that, what is your favorite line? What line did you bring?
Okay, so I brought 2 lines.
Me too.
I brought my favorite, and then I brought an honorable mention that I think is funny. Okay, so my favorite this is towards the end of the book, about 3/4 of the way through. So Jeanette is talking to her parents, and she tells them that she's gonna go move to New York. And her dad storms out of the room, and her mom is just sitting there, just staring blankly, not even looking at her, She's like, Mom, you don't have to be sad, all right? And her mom says, I'm not sad because I'll miss you. I'm sad because you get to go to New York and I'm stuck here. which I think is just, like, the perfect line to describe the character of her mother in general, but also just her relationship with her parents and her mother's relationship with all of her kids. She feels exactly the same way about all of her kids. Is she is jealous of them because she thinks that her whole life was ruined because she had kids and took care of them, and that was all of her time when she literally never took care of them.
Yeah.
But I think that line just, like, perfectly sums it up, because, like, to tell your kid that you're not sad because you're gonna miss them if they're gonna move halfway across the country, and this was, like, back, we didn't have video chat, you didn't have any of that, so you weren't gonna see her. That line just, like, made me so sad when she said it, because I just couldn't imagine, like, my own mother saying that to me. I would just be, like, heartbroken, but at this point, she's used to it, too, which is even sadder.
Yeah.
And my honorable mention was this one. Just, she said it and it made me laugh so hard. So, this is a line that Jeanette said, and she went to her neighbor's house, and she says, "One thing about whoring is it'll put a chicken on the table."
Yes.
And I thought it was so funny, because at this point, Jeanette is 11 years old. It just shows, like, so much about her life, because me at 11 years old, I didn't know the word whoring.
Or what it was.
Or what it was at all. Like, and I know that she definitely, like, grew up in a different time, and her neighborhood was, like, a bad neighborhood, so she learned a lot more faster. But it's just, like, crazy, and it shows so much about, like, her, like, very disturbed upbringing, that she, like, is like, well, maybe whoring's not such a bad thing, because it puts a chicken on the table, and we don't have that.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I just brought that one because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I do like that line. When I first read it, I was like, what? Yeah, so my favorite line is kind of the opposite direction. It's at the beginning of the book, and it's when it's Christmas Day, and her dad, obviously they didn't get him anything because they were really poor, and they were saying, we do Christmas after Christmas so they can get the sales. My favorite line was when he takes Jeanette out to the desert and was saying, pick whatever star you want. And she picks Venus. And the quote is, "Years from now, when all the junk they got is broken and long forgotten, you'll still have your star." And I really like that, mostly because it's at the beginning of the book, you don't really know what the dad's gonna do and, like, the story yet. So you're like, wow, this is a really cute moment between daughter and father. And then you keep reading, and you're like, wow, let's go back to page 40. Let's reread that section again.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. And then I have another little, like, I like the scene more than I like the quote. And the scene is when Lori gets her glasses. And
I love that scene.
I love that scene. And speaking from someone that does have glasses, I related to that scene. But basically, yeah, she gets her glasses. Her mom was against it her entire life. She probably knew she needed glasses and was like, no, it's a, what did she call it? A crutch. They use it as a crutch. If you need glasses, your eyes just need more exercise, is what she said. But the quote that I liked was, "I can't only just see the trees, I can also see the individual leaves on them. Can you see them? I mean, not just the branches, but each little leaf." I nodded. Lori looked at me and then burst into tears. Which is crazy, because Lori's a very strong character. Would you say character, or would you say person? Because it's a memoir, so...
Yeah, I've just been calling them characters because, it's, like, still a book format. Yeah, they are real people that this is based off of, and it's about her, like, actual life, but in this case, we can just call them characters, because it's not our life.
Yeah, so that also draws into favorite character is Lori, for sure. Just because the one thing that won me over was when she started fighting the grandma. When I don't remember what she was doing, but the grandma, her name is Irma, she slaps Lori, I think for talking back or something, and then Lori turns around and slaps her right back at the ripe age of 13. Didn't care. And I love that. That right there, she became my favorite character.
That's really...
Other reasons.
That's really funny, because Lori is also my favorite character.
Yes.
And when I was thinking about it, I was like, it's really hard to pick a favorite character, because most of the time, I don't like any of these characters, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like, even Jeanette, but it's also because, like, she didn't know any better. That's the only times where I didn't really like her character. or she's kind of like brainwashed to be like that. But Lori is always like such a strong character, and I love how she got so used to playing the like mother role because she was the oldest child and their mother did nothing. So she just automatically assumes that role and is always like the strongest one, and she isn't afraid to talk back even though she might get punished for it. The whole time is telling the other kids, like, this isn't right. We shouldn't be raised like this. We shouldn't do this. Like, she knew the whole time. Where that's something that stuck out about her so much is the other kids, like Jeanette and Brian. There's not a lot about Maureen, but Jeanette and Brian mostly, they're like always so like
dependent,
and they're so brainwashed by their parents to think that all of this is okay, and Lori has never thought it was okay, and she always knew. And like when she like gets up the courage to like go and to New York, and then her dad tries to like crush her dreams, that moment just like hurts you so much because you're like, she's always been that strong character, and like in the moments where she does break down, you know it's like super real because she doesn't do that.
Exactly. Another thing I like about her is the way that she's kind of described. Jeanette would describe her as she was her older sister with glasses, goth, army boots, a white dress. That is such a great way to describe a character. And that made me like her even more because army boots and a white dress, slay.
Vibes.
So we're going to get into some talking points. So I'm going to say this really quick. When I first started reading this book, I did not like this book. I understood, not a huge first person, like, I like third person more, but I was like, oh, I completely understand because this is a memoir. So the first few chapters are between 3 and 5. And all of the reactions were very, like, too mature for a 3-year-old to say. I got, like, I thought too much of it, and I would read a sentence, and I'd be like, a 3-year-old would never say that. 3-year-old probably wouldn't even know what these words were.
Right.
And that's the hard thing with memoirs, is that you want to make it believable, but you also want it to, sell, and you want it to have a good story, especially at the beginning, because it's what drives people in. And she did have that little part with her mom at the beginning, but yeah, when it jumped into her being 3, it was really hard for me to get into. But the more I obviously kept with it, and the more I got with it, the more I started liking it. And especially, like, the descriptions are so good. The way that she describes it, I'm like, yes. It's like I'm there. Right. I don't want to be, but I'm there.
Yeah, I think it's really hard because she published this in 2005. So this was like almost 40 years later when she sits down and like writes this book, and she obviously remembers these moments, but she's not going to remember the dialogue. Like, She was 3. Nobody remembers really like words they said or conversations they had when they were 3, especially when you're 40. I think sometimes it's hard to like not get lost in that and try to get in that mindset because you don't remember what it's like to be 3. Or like, and I do think she always acted more mature than she was. So like at points where she would like say stuff and then she'd be like, at this point I was 11, and I was like, 11?
Yeah.
But I do think at 3 she was like a little too mature. It also, I feel like it helped the story in a way where you like are always like, oh, she's always been mature, she's always like done things on her own kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do think there are points where she stays at an age too long.
I want to say like 13-ish. It was like so much at that age. And like I totally get it if a lot of things happen, but I would have really liked to see more teenage years. Or like early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah, she did kind of towards the end of the book, after she turned like 13, then she was like in junior year, and then she was moving to New York, and then she was like, had been there for 3 years, and it like moved past that really fast, but she stayed at the ages of like 6 and 7 and 11 to 13 for like a really long time. But I also get those are very like formative years of her life. And a lot happened in those years that made her who she is, or a lot of things that she remembered. So I get like going back into it, but I definitely would have liked to see more of her as like a teenager. I feel like the way she described it is she was kind of just running around working all the time. So like she might not have had as many like stories or anything that she thought would actually help the book at those ages. So I get it, but there were a few times where I was like, how long have you been 11?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like 6 years you've been 11.
Yeah, no, I agree. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the pregnancies that the mom went through, and how she said that right before she had her fourth child, sorry. Maureen, yeah. She said she was pregnant for 11 months with her.
She said she was pregnant with Lori for 14 months.
Yeah.
Because we didn't see that part of the story. But when she was pregnant with Maureen, I believe she said she was pregnant with her for 11 or 12 months.
More than the average time.
Yeah.
Looking at it from a writer's point of view, it's a really good way to show that, her mom isn't very mentally stable. It's kind of a sneakier way to put it in. Because at first I was like, oh, they were doing this for the kids. They were like, trying to make a joke out of it. But then she kept saying it, and I'm like, oh, she actually believes this. Another thing, which I thought was really weird, when she had Maureen, they were just in the car, and then she walks out with the baby, and she's like, throws the baby in the back seat, and then was like, okay, let's go. Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, the mother, I definitely wouldn't use the words stable or sane to describe her at any point in this story. She's crazy. She's like, oh, well, we didn't want you to be raised to be so dependent, and kids need to do things for themselves. But she doesn't, have that...
She didn't teach them to do stuff for themselves, too.
Right, they just did it.
Yeah.
Because they had to. And I think it's, crazy to kind of see a glimpse, inside of her mind at different points where you're like, why would anyone ever think that was okay to do? In the story, it's a big part at the very beginning is Jeanette is boiling hot dogs for herself when she's 3 years old, and her dress catches on fire and burns her entire torso to the point where she's in the hospital for 6 weeks and has skin grafts, and she comes back home from it, and 2 days later she's boiling hot dogs for herself because her mother is just a terrible mother.
Yeah.
I don't like her at all. Anytime she spoke, I was just annoyed because just the things that she came up with and the things that she said, I was like, I just can't understand that mindset. And the more you do see it, the more you it's less shocking from her character, kind of, because you see her do it again and again, but I still don't understand anything that comes out of that woman's mind.
Speaking of her mom, I don't think it was ever officially announced, but I really think her mom has, it seemed like she had manic bipolar disorder. The way that she had super high highs and really low lows, especially towards the end when her children are starting to leave her, and she was in the bed all the time and they couldn't get her out of her bed. I was like, oh, so she's bipolar.
If she would have went to the doctor, she would have been diagnosed with multiple things, probably, but she didn't believe in modern medicine or doctors or anything. It was all just excuses and crutches.
Yeah. What is the Glass Castle? If anybody's wondering, why did they name it the Glass Castle?
Okay, so in the book, Rex Walls, the father, he has a very wide imagination. You could almost call it childlike. He never is the best father, even at the beginning, because they're still struggling and they're still not providing for their children like they should. But the way that he makes them believe in things is so cool. And so he comes up with this idea. So he thinks once they strike gold, which he thinks he's going to do the whole time, and get rich, he's going to build for them what he calls the Glass Castle. Now, throughout this book, he's working on these plans for the Glass Castle, and he really goes into details, goes into the measurements, maps the whole thing out, and has these big diagrams. And so it's just this big house made entirely of glass.
Impractical.
It's very impractical. There is a point in the book where he says, I'm gonna build the Glass Castle finally. And the whole time he keeps telling these kids he's gonna build this. And you see them slowly lose hope. And Jeanette is the last one to lose hope. She always has her father's side. But in that point where she tells him, he's sitting at the table with the plans out, and he's like, since Lori's gone, we can make your room bigger in the Glass Castle. I'm gonna build it. And Jeanette she's about to leave for New York, and she says, Dad, you can build this if you want, but I'm not gonna live there. And I think that, completely is the end of her fully supporting him no matter what, because she's done that the whole time, where she's always got his back, always been his number one fan, and she breaks that. I think that kind of ruins him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was his last hope he had, was her always believing in him. So a big line that he says in this whole book is, "Have I ever let you down, mountain goat," is what he calls her. Towards the end, you start to see her be like, yes. You know, he has let her down so many times, when at the beginning you see she's like, no, never, you would never do that. And that kind of, like, ends that really, like, deep bond and kind of pushes him over the edge, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. You see him do this thing, and you're like, okay, this has to be it. And then she's like, no, I still, I have faith in him. And then you're like, okay, the next thing, this has to be it. And you're like, no, she's still there. And then, yeah, there was that last moment when she finally was like, I can't anymore. I need to focus on me and my life, which was good. So, when I was writing down for my favorite relationship, it was originally her and her dad. Because, like you said, it was very, like, I love the dynamic of them. They worked well together. But the more I read it, the more I was like, no, I think my favorite relationship is honestly all the siblings together. That literally, if they didn't have each other, wouldn't survive. And my favorite, like, moment between them was when Lori and Jeanette were collecting money to get to New York. And Brian was like, okay, I'll give you money to help out. He's like, take all the money I have, get to New York. And
he just automatically jumps in to help out his sisters when he originally doesn't even plan on going, and he's a lot younger, so he's like, yes, I will work and I will pay for Lori to get there, too.
He picked up more, like, lawn mowing things to be able to help out his siblings. I really like that because they helped each other out, and it's just so cute. I just love all three of them. Not the fourth one. I don't remember her name.
Weird.
I did not like her. Maureen.
Yeah, Maureen.
She went off to LA. Like, girl, get back here. Who was your favorite?
Okay, so I did put her and her dad. Not because I like him at all, because I don't.
It's more of the dynamic between them.
But yeah, just the way that she, no matter, like, how much neglect, honestly abuse, he puts these kids through, manipulative with them, and he could get them, especially Jeanette, to do anything he wanted, but she was always on his side. She always had his back. And I think that was such a cool dynamic between them, because it was unlike any other relationship. You know, the other kids kind of gave up on the parents a long time ago, and Jeanette wasn't a huge fan of her mom and kind of gave up on her too, but she just had this special relationship with her dad. He always told her that she was his favorite, even in front of the other kids. He didn't care, but to see that even though he wasn't a good father, she still loved him because he was her father. Like, it kind of goes to show, like, the resilience of that relationship, to where people can still beat you down and pretty much take everything you have, and you can still care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very toxic relationship, but I just really liked their dynamic and how they worked together, especially at the beginning.
Especially at the beginning, when she was
they were
very
cute
young.
at the beginning.
Yeah, they were really cute. Like, there were some parts where I was like, how is this sad? He's a really good dad. But then it dives in so hard, and you're like, hold on a second.
Right. Like, even at the beginning, he couldn't really keep a job or provide for them as well as he should have, but he was still a good father to them, to where he, like, tried to teach them things, and he told them stories, and he made them believe in things, but then that gets lost along the way, and it's so sad to, like, see him become that person that he is at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, how did you feel about their parents coming to New York after them?
I was pissed.
Yeah, I was real mad.
I was so mad that Lori goes to New York first. Jeanette follows her.
It's the cutest scene, actually.
Yes.
Because basically Jeanette is going to babysit for this, like, richer family, and she was like, if you come with us to the summer house for the summer, we'll give you $200. And she's like,
take Lori instead, buy her a train ticket to New York at the end of the summer, which is so awesome that she gave that up for her, because their dad took their money that they had saved up, and then they weren't able to save up as much after that until the time where she had to go, and she just really wanted her sister to get out of there, and because it's what she wanted and that's what she deserved. So Lori went first, Jeanette followed her, and then Brian, and then Maureen also followed them there when she was 12.
They took her. They were like, we need to get Maureen here. Yeah. We need to get her away from them. So she didn't really get a choice, kind of. They were just like, we're bringing Maureen here with us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Brian did choose.
Yeah. So then Jeanette is listening to the radio, and she hears this story about this van that's like in the middle of a highway, broken down, and there's this dog running loose, and there's furniture and stuff falling out of this van. And automatically you're like, oh no. Her mom calls her and is like, surprise, we moved to New York so we could be a family again. Mm-hmm. And it's just like heartbreaking to me because they finally got away from them and they were all doing so well on their own. And they were like...
Yeah, she was going to college. Mm-hmm. Lori was, like, had a stable job. And Brian was, like, getting ready to become a police officer. So they were all kind of figuring out their life.
Their parents just had to come back and haunt them. You kind of see them like, really? We have to take care of them here, too?
And they did. They did take care of them.
Mm-hmm. They lived with Lori, and then Lori kicked her dad out because they just argued all the time. And her mom was there for a while, and then she kicked her mom out. Then they lived in their van, and then their van got towed, and then they were homeless, and they were sleeping on park benches and wherever they could for a while. And, you know, Lori would still take them in if it was really cold, or they couldn't do it anymore, but then they still did it. That's like the entire story of these kids is they can't do it anymore, they can't take it anymore, but then they still do it.
They didn't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then their parents finally find a place that they're squatting in.
So, would you say there are any missed opportunities in your perspective? I know we said a couple, like, you know, I wish there was more of, like, her teenage years. And it is hard when it is a memoir because it's very personal story. So, you know, our opinions are our opinions, but in the end, it's her story, and she can tell it any way she wants to.
Right. It's kind of hard to be like, hey, you should have put this in here when that didn't happen in her life. But, like, I know it wasn't, like, a romance story, but I kind of wanted to see more of the dynamic between Jeanette and her first and her second husband. Mm-hmm. Because her second husband, she's still married to, I believe.
Yeah.
But the first husband, there was, like, nothing. She just said he's a good man, and I know he'll never take my money, or, like, he'll just never take her paycheck from her, which is something that she thought that all men did.
Well, her dad literally did that to her mom constantly, to the point where on payday he would go, so she was a teacher, she had a teaching degree, and throughout the whole story, they get odd jobs, and she would pick up a teaching job, and he would go to the school to pick her up, to drive her straight to the bank to take her check from her. So I could totally see, like, her thinking that, and then when she finds out, oh, you know, he's a good guy, he doesn't do that, then she's like, yes.
Right, then she's like, I guess I have to marry him. And then finally she realized, oh, I can actually marry someone that I love, and it doesn't have to just be because he's a nice guy. And the way that she talks about her second husband is a little bit more, like, loving. There's not a ton between them, but there's, like, a moment where they're sitting in the car, and she, like, looks at him, and she's just smiling because she finally, like, found someone in her life is good for her.
Yeah.
She needed.
Yeah, I agree. I wish there was a little bit more, like, of her later life. Maybe, like, after college, after she got her journalistic degree. Did you get a degree in journalism?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, at one point she was like, yeah, and then me and Eric, I think, was the first husband. She was like, yeah, me and Eric got married.
Really?
She just skipped over, like, these big points, but I mean, that's not really what the story was about. No. So I get it. It was about her family and how
her life
dysfunctional they were.
Yeah.
She had to keep out the normal parts that were boring.
So another thing I wanted to talk about was the watch scene when she's working at the jewelry store. And so basically what happens is she works at the jewelry store as, like, a part-time job when she's in high school, I want to say. Like, she said
I think she was 13.
Yeah, so middle school.
Yeah.
And she says that she was older, but she's not. And while she's working there, she really, really really wants this watch. And so she steals the watch. And she has this family that's been stealing every single day of their life almost. Like, they steal stuff all the time. They steal from banks, they steal from stores, they steal all the time. And yet, I think that's a really good character development, because she takes it back because she feels so bad about it. And she couldn't wear it. The only time she wore it was at night. Or at home. No,
I think
it was
she
at night.
Brought it back the next day.
No, I think it was.
Or it was a few days.
It was a couple days at least. Because I remember her saying, like, I didn't even wear it at home because I didn't want my brothers or my mom to see it. So
it was because she was upset at the manager, who he would go across the street and he would take this key to, like, the very expensive jewelry with him because he didn't trust her, which is understandable. You know, she's a young employee, but then he would come back and he would count them all, and he would make it known to her that he didn't trust her. So that kind of made her be like, well, you can't act that way towards me, and if you're not going to trust me, then I might as well do something to make you not trust me. And that was kind of like her motive. But then you see that even having, like, this past where her whole family steals and everything, she's like, I don't want to be that person, and brings it back.
Yeah, do you want to play a little game?
Of course.
All right. So, throughout the whole story, they get a lot of cars. You know, the cars get stolen or they break down and they have to leave them while they walk across the country. Do you remember any of the names of the vehicles they had? I'll give you a hint. There were 4.
Okay.
You have to get at least half right.
I do remember Elvis was the gold Mustang, I think it was.
Elvis.
And then they had the blue goose and the green caboose. I do not remember the 4th one, though. Was it...
Do you want to guess?
Like, at what point in their...
It was the one where they were like, you guys can't name the car anymore, you're too old.
Oh, and then they named it anyways. I don't remember that one, no.
Yep, so you got the 3, and then the other one is Oldsmobile.
Oh, yeah, they couldn't call it anything else, so they were like, this is its name, the Oldsmobile. Okay.
Think you did pretty well. Gold, star, but missing 1 point. So we're taking a 4-pointed star.
Perfect, I love those.
Another thing I wanted to talk about was, at the end, when... This is the part that made me, I think, the most mad out of everything that happened. Was when she said that there was land that was worth $1 million. And then somebody died, and the mom, which we haven't even said her name.
Her name is Rosemary.
Rosemary, yeah. The mom wanted Jeanette to take money from her then husband to buy this land that was worth $1 million.
Yeah, so the whole time her mom, or their mom, had this land in Texas that she was leasing to, like, an oil company or something, and she would get a check every, like, month or every few months for it, but she owned this land outright, and it was her grandpa's land, she owned half, and her brother, I think, owned the other half, and her brother died, and she comes up to Jeanette and is... Can you ask Eric to borrow $1 million to buy this land? Because we have to keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And Jeanette keeps asking her, how much land is it? How much does it go for there? And her mom just keeps saying, I don't know. And then she was like, well, give me where it is and how much, and I will look up how much it is. Like, I can see how much your land that you have is. And that's when she was like, I don't know, it's like roughly X amount of money. And Jeanette is like, so you've been sitting on this land for that much money our entire lives? And she's like, well, we have to keep it in the family. It's really important. And then she starts looking down on her for, like, not wanting to keep that in the family, not keeping it as a possession that they have, which is a whole nother thing about their possessions, for being, like, very nomadic. Sorry, I know we're going on a tangent here, but being very nomadic as they are, they had a lot of stuff. And then, but yet the kids couldn't take it. Always left it.
Yeah.
Well, her mom would always take her art supplies, because, you know, that was...
Which she never made any money off
her
of.
career, or so she said, but never sold anything. But yeah, they would have all these possessions, but they would tell the kids, you can bring one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Jeanette tried to bring, like, a rock collection, and they were like, no, pick one. Like, the kids weren't allowed to have anything, but then the mom was allowed to have anything she wanted and keep it all because it was all valuable. And she had, like, vintage jewelry, too, that was all worth a lot of money. Brian and Jeanette found 2-carat diamond ring.
Yeah, instead of selling it to buy food.
Yeah, and they tried to sell it. And their mom said, no, this is to replace my ring that your dad pawned off.
Yeah.
And this whole time, these kids would go days without eating. They were eating food out of the garbage can at their school, and they didn't have indoor plumbing at some of their houses. And
it was a
sometimes they didn't even have a house.
Yeah.
They were sleeping on the ground outside, and their mom was just sitting on this $1 million plot of land that she never talked about.
Yeah.
Because she knew. And I think that was just like...
Icing on the cake.
The nail in the coffin is what I was going to say, but sure, either way.
Either one,
just made me hate her mother, despise her for doing that to her children. And
yeah, it's just weird that they were, they were nomadic, but they were also hoarders. Every home that they got, they always ended up filling it with stuff.
But it was always like their mom's stuff.
Yeah.
Like these kids had no clothes, they had to wear the same clothes. And they were, like, ripping, had holes in them, but their house was just full of all this stuff. And I just can't understand their mom's brain at all.
Is there any, like, last-minute things that you could think of? Any, that you want to, like, bring into detail?
I think it's kind of weird that they, no matter where they went, they always had pets. And they would take in strays all over the place, but they didn't have any food.
Yeah.
That's what I don't, like, how are they feeding these pets? Didn't these pets get, like, hungry and, like, aggressive? Like...
Didn't the dad say, like, they can stay, but they have to, like, find their own food? Like,
yeah.
They were all strays. They didn't, like, go and buy these pets. They were all just on the street. So...
Brian did buy
a lizard.
An iguana.
Yeah.
In the winter and tried to keep it under his blanket with him, and it froze to death.
Sorry, I just freaked out because I just remembered this one scene that I literally can't stand. And I think it would have made the book better if they didn't put it in, if she didn't put it in. It was, okay, a little backstory. So they were living in this house, and it didn't have any AC, and it was during the summer. So they left. God. This part freaked me out. So I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. So they leave the windows and doors wide open. The dad would not, and the mom would not shut the doors or windows because it got too hot and they didn't get a good airflow. Well, Jeanette woke up one day to a man in her bed.
He was standing next to her bed over her. Touching her inappropriately. And she was about 7, I would say.
Yeah. And then she started, like, screaming or yelling, and then Brian runs in and he's like, what are you doing? And then they chase him out with a bat. And then she goes on talking about how, like, they become, like, the...
pervert hunters.
Yeah, pervert hunters, yeah.
I hate this scene because she tells her parents... Anytime she tells her parents something happened where... there are a lot of stories of sexual assault in this. And they're all, like, so, like, heartbreaking. But then she goes and she tells her parents and they go... well, are you fine now?
Yeah.
And her mom basically is like, oh, well, sexual assault isn't a real thing as long as you're fine after.
Yeah.
Like, did you get hurt? No, you're fine. And that, to me, like, was the grossest thing in this entire story, is that her parents were like, no, we're not going to shut the doors or the windows. Yeah. And they would sleep with a knife and a bat in their beds with them because these strange men would walk into their homes and, like, pass out in their living room, and because they just had to keep the door open.
You wouldn't catch me dead.
Yeah, that was
I hated that part, and that scene was very hard for me to kind of, like, was that real? I obviously have no say if it's real or not. These are her memories, these are her thoughts, but it's just, like, the whole scenario, it doesn't make sense to me. It just throws me for a loop, okay?
It's just hard because the way that her parents viewed people and things, it makes sense that they would do this sort of thing. They, like, these kids got into fights all the time, and their parents would be like, good, glad you stuck up for yourself.
Yeah.
And, like, these kids would have, like, broken ribs at, like, 11.
This book reminds me a lot of Shameless. I don't know if you've never seen the show.
I've seen an episode or two or a few, and
It is a really good show, and it's a really good way to put, like, perspective on lower income families, and I could see a show coming out with this same idea. If this were to become, like, on TV, I could see it become a show. It is a movie, though. We did not watch the movie because we didn't want to talk about the movie the whole time, but we probably are going to watch it right after this. But yeah, any last minute thing you can think of?
I would just say if you kind of want, like, a glimpse into, like, how other people live and to make yourself sad, you can read this book. And I believe when I read it the first time, I was, like, 14, and it kind of just broke my heart entirely.
Didn't you read this in school?
Yeah.
Was it a school mandatory
No,
thing?
it was
okay.
like, you could read whatever book you wanted.
You chose this one?
I had no idea.
Why didn't you ask me? I could have gave you plenty of good books.
Okay, but I like that I've been able to see that, like, supposed to be a real story about this woman's childhood, and it's just, like, so insane to read through this book, and you have to be like, this isn't fiction.
Yeah,
at times.
I had to keep reminding myself. People read this for school. Like, people were giving this out as homework, which is crazy because not only, like, the sexual assault and there's, like, drug use, there's obviously alcohol use, the dad's a drunk. The language is outrageous. Like, it's
that the kids even use.
The kids even use, yeah. It's, I really don't see this as, like, school material. Like, it has a good message, yes, but I don't know. But before we go, let's rate this book. I have my rating scale ready to go.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, I would give this book 3 orange trees out of 5.
The orange trees.
Orange trees, yes. Those were... I really like that house.
A lot better than
that was probably
the one
their
in
highs.
Welch.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, their grandmother died, and they inherited one of her houses that she had, and actually they had money for, like, a year, and it was amazing, and then, of course, their parents ruined it. Like, they ruin everything. I think that I would rate this book, I mean, I gotta go classic here, so I'm gonna just say 5 glass castles out of 7.
Okay, alright.
Because, you know, I liked it, and I like the meaning behind it, and she just wanted to share her story and, like, let everyone know that people do live like this, but it wasn't perfect either.
Yeah. If you want to know why we think that, re-listen to this episode.
Exactly.
Alright, well, thank you for coming on to the second episode of the Book Stop.
Of course.
We're really having a lot of fun here, aren't we? Yeah, so you're going to be coming back I think you're coming back on my birthday. Is the next episode we have. You're going to be reading...
I'm sorry, you mean on Jeanette Walls' birthday?
Oh, sorry.
How dare you?
And you're going to be reading my favorite book. And you're going to have to come back in April and figure out what book that is.
I'm very excited. See you guys later.
Thank you for turning the pages with us this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support on social media. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to get a reminder of the next episode. Thanks again for listening to The Book Stop. Bye!